The chandeliers glowed above the ballroom, crystal glasses clinked, and 77 guests leaned forward as my father rose to give his birthday speech. I sat near the front in a navy dress, the gift box heavy in my hands, heart pounding with the foolish hope that tonight on his 60th birthday he might finally see me. When my turn came, I stood, my voice soft but steady, offering the restored pocket watch that had belonged to his father, saying, "Dad, I thought you would want this back, a piece of our history." For a breath, I thought he might smile. Instead, his eyes narrowed, his lip curled, and he spat. "History means nothing from someone who drags this family into debt. You are a disgrace." Before I could respond, his hand whipped across my face with a crack so sharp the violinist stopped playing mid-note. Pain exploded along my cheek, the taste of copper flooding my mouth, but worse than the sting was the sound that followed. My sister Lisa, flawless in a crimson gown, threw her head back and clapped, laughing as if it were a performance. "Finally, Dad, you gave her what she deserves." Her words cut deeper than the slap, and the room erupted into murmurs. A cousin smirked. "I always knew she was trouble." A neighbor whispered too loudly, "Embarrassing your own father on his big night, shameless." Some guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one stood for me. My father straightened his tie, looked down at me as though I were filth, and hissed, "You are nothing." Tonight, the world sees it. My legs trembled, the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My skin burned where his palm had landed. I wanted to scream, to vanish, to rewind time, but all I could do was stand frozen as 77 pairs of eyes branded me as an outcast in my own bloodline. In that suspended moment, I realized it was not just a slap, it was an erasure. I was no longer a daughter, no longer part of this family, just a stain they wanted gone. My sister kept clapping, the sharp rhythm echoing in my ears like a hammer driving nails into my coffin. And yet beneath the humiliation, beneath the roar of shame, a quiet flame lit inside me. They thought I was finished. They thought I would bow my head, crawl away, disappear. But I knew one thing with piercing clarity. One quiet call could turn this entire night against them. If you are watching this right now, I want to ask you something straight from the heart. Have you ever stood in a room full of people who should have protected you only to realize that every single face was turned against you? Have you ever tasted humiliation so sharp it burned more than pain itself? I was slapped across the face by my own father and cheered on by my sister in front of 77 witnesses. But what hurt the most was the silence of everyone else, the way no one spoke up, no one said, "Stop," no one reached for me. If you have ever felt that kind of betrayal, if you have ever known the sting of family turning you into a spectacle, then you understand the weight I carried that night. Leave me a comment and tell me where you are listening from, because I know these stories echo far beyond one ballroom in Boston. And if you want to hear how one quiet call can turn humiliation into justice, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the end. What you will hear is not just a story of revenge, but a reminder that silence is never the end. My name is Emily Carter. I am 29 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have lived in the shadow of my older sister, Lisa. We grew up in a small 2-story house on the edge of Boston, the kind of neighborhood where kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on and neighbors brought pies to one another on Sundays. From the outside, we looked like the picture of an ordinary American family, but inside the walls of that house, there was an unspoken law, and that law was that Lisa could do no wrong while I could do no right. My father owned a modest auto repair shop. My mother worked night shifts as a nurse, and they both poured every ounce of their pride into Lisa. When she won spelling bees, the living room filled with balloons when she brought home A+ report cards. Dad took her out for steak dinners, and when she graduated high school, he gave her the keys to a used Honda Civic with a bow on top. I still remember standing on the porch that day, clutching a modest set of books I had been given with the words, "You can learn from these," while Lisa revved the engine and grinned. Birthdays were the worst. Lisa always had parties with streamers cakes from the best bakery in town and brand new dresses. My 10th birthday came and went with a store-bought cupcake and a sweater 2 sizes too big. When I asked about a party, Dad said bluntly, "We cannot celebrate failure, Emily. You are not Lisa." Those words carved into me deeper than any slap ever could. Through high school, I tried to prove my worth in quiet ways. I studied hard-worked weekends at the library saved for college. I never asked for much, but every time Lisa stumbled, my parents caught her. When she wrecked her car, Dad paid for the repairs. When she failed a class, Mom stayed up all night rewriting her papers. But when I once asked for $20 to buy a biology textbook, Dad sneered, "Figure it out yourself." You always should. That kind of favoritism becomes a cage. It makes you doubt every step you take. It whispers that no matter what you achieve, it will never be enough. After college, I became a junior financial analyst at a mid-sized firm downtown. Nothing glamorous but honest work. I paid my rent, kept my credit clean, and even managed to restore the old pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather, believing one day Dad might appreciate it. Meanwhile, Lisa flitted from job to job, always failing upward, always cushioned by our parents' blind devotion. Family dinners became arenas where comparisons were sport. Lisa would toss her hair and announce I'd just interviewed for another law firm, and Dad would beam while turning to me with his cutting stare. "And what about you, Emily? Still just another employee, still no husband, still no children." It was never enough that I stood on my own feet, because to them, independence meant nothing if it did not come wrapped in prestige and titles. The cruelest moments were small, easy to miss if you were not looking, like the Christmas when Lisa was given a diamond bracelet and I unwrapped a box of discount socks, or the Easter dinner where Dad toasted to Lisa's bright future while forgetting I had just been promoted at work. Over the years, I learned to swallow the hurt, to nod and smile, to carry my small victories in silence. But silence is heavy. It settles in your chest until you almost believe the lies they tell about you. And by the time I walked into that banquet hall for my father's 60th birthday part, of me still hoped foolishly that maybe tonight would be different, that maybe the restored pocket watch would bridge the distance, that maybe for once he would look at me and see a daughter instead of a disappointment. That hope shattered the moment his hand struck my face. The weeks leading up to my father's birthday were already heavy with tension, though at the time I could not have guessed just how far it would spiral. It began one Tuesday evening when I came home from work to find a thick envelope from a bank I did not recognize waiting on the counter of my apartment. Inside was a letter addressed to me, congratulating me on the approval of a home equity loan. My stomach twisted because I had never applied for any loan. I stared at the figures, the interest rate, the repayment schedule, all printed neatly under my name. I called the number listed, and after a maze of automated prompts, finally reached a clerk. She confirmed politely that yes, Miss Emily Carter, your loan was approved last month. We have your signature on file. I froze. I had never been inside that branch. My voice cracked as I told her there had to be a mistake. She promised to send me a copy of the signed application. That night, I barely slept, replaying every transaction I had ever made, wondering if my identity had been stolen. A few days later, I went to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, hoping for comfort. Instead, I walked into Lisa, smirking at the table, flipping through glossy brochures for a new condo downtown. Dad poured himself whiskey and said casually, "Lisa's found a place, and since the family is helping her with the down payment, she will finally have her own." I frowned. Family meaning what? He shot me a look that made me feel small and said, "Not that you would understand. You only bring debt." I tried to defend myself, saying I never borrowed anything, but Lisa cut me off with a laugh. "Oh, please, Emily, the bank calls every week. Maybe you signed something you were too careless to read." The cruelty stung more because Mom stayed silent, serving mashed potatoes as if she could not hear a word. Another twist came at work when my HR department summoned me asking about delinquent accounts. My credit report apparently listed 2 late payments on that same mysterious loan. My face burned as I tried to explain that it was not mine, that someone must have used my information. The HR manager gave me a tight smile, the kind that meant she did not believe me. I walked out with shame pressing heavy on my shoulders. As the birthday celebration drew closer, every family interaction sharpened into mockery. Dad phoned me once, and instead of inviting me warmly, he said flatly, "Do not embarrass me at the party. Bring a decent gift, something that shows you are not completely useless." I bit my tongue, not telling him about the nights I lay awake staring at the loan letter on my kitchen table. On the morning of the banquet, I visited my parents' house to help set up. In the living room, Lisa had arranged a photo collage for the guests' pictures of family milestones. As I scanned the board, my stomach dropped. My images were missing. Prom night graduations, even a Christmas where I had baked, the entire dinner erased. It was as if I never existed. Lisa caught my expression and said sweetly, "Oh, sorry, we only had space for the important memories." I clenched my fists, forcing a smile to hide the sting. Later that afternoon, as we loaded gifts into the car, Dad noticed the small box with the pocket watch and scoffed, "That all you could afford? Try not to humiliate me in front of 70 people with your cheap taste." My heart pounded, but I swallowed the retort rising in my throat. By the time I walked into the glittering ballroom that evening, I already felt stripped bare. Guests shook Lisa's hand, praising her career moves while I was introduced with a shrug. "This is Emily. She works somewhere downtown." The small cuts accumulated until they felt like open wounds. I tried to hold my head high, but every whisper, every glance, every smirk reminded me that I was an outsider in my own family. And though I could not name it, yet the truth was lurking underneath, that the mysterious loan, the erased photos, the sharp words were all threads of the same web tightening around me. The banquet hall sparkled with chandeliers, glasses filled with champagne, and waiters gliding between tables balancing trays of shrimp cocktails and miniature quiches. 77 guests crowded the round tables draped in white linens, all gathered to honor my father's 60th birthday. I sat at a table near the front, my pulse racing, the small box with the restored pocket watch resting in my lap. When the MC called family members to say a few words, Lisa swept up first, dazzling in a crimson dress, her speech filled with rehearsed charm. She praised Dad's strength, his sacrifices, and ended with a flourish that earned applause. Dad kissed her cheek, pride shining in his eyes. Then all eyes turned to me. My hands shook as I stood clutching the box like a lifeline. I forced a smile, cleared my throat, and began. "Tonight, I wanted to honor you with something that belongs to our family. Something I thought might remind you of who we are." I opened the lid to reveal the gleaming pocket watch, polished and ticking softly for the first time in decades. For one heartbeat, silence stretched, and I dared to believe maybe he would soften. But his face hardened, his lip curling as he leaned into the microphone. "History from you means nothing, Emily. You bring nothing but shame and debt." My stomach dropped. Guests gasped. Then, without warning, his hand swung fast and sharp. The crack echoed through the hall as his palm slammed across my cheek, snapping my head sideways. A collective gasp tore through the room, forks clattered against plates. Pain seared across my face, hot and stinging. My vision blurred with tears I fought to hold back. But worse than the slap came the sound that followed. Lisa rose halfway from her chair, clapping her hands in a mocking rhythm, her laughter slicing through the silence. "Finally, Dad, you gave her what she deserves." The words hung in the air like poison. Gasps turned into murmurs. A cousin muttered loudly enough to hear, "She always was a problem." A neighbor leaned toward another guest, whispering, "Embarrassing her own father on his birthday." Imagine the nerve. My father stood tall, straightening his tie, his voice dripping venom. "You are nothing, Emily. Tonight, everyone sees it." The heat in my face was nothing compared to the cold, hollow ache spreading in my chest. 77 eyes pierced me, branding me as the family failure. I searched for a sympathetic glance, but found only discomfort, pity, or thinly veiled amusement. My mother sat frozen lips pressed tight, eyes cast down as if refusing to see me. The room tilted, sounds muffled, and for a moment I thought my legs would give way. Lisa's clapping slowed into deliberate slaps of palm against palm, her smile wide, savoring every second. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood, fighting not to cry. Because if I cried, it would be proof to them that I was weak, that I was exactly what they believed. But inside, I screamed. This was not a slap between father and daughter. It was a public execution of dignity. It was erasure. And in that hollow moment, as the hall buzzed with gossip and judgment, something cold and clear took shape inside me. They wanted me humiliated, erased, forgotten. They wanted me to leave with my head bowed and my soul broken. But I would not give them that. I pressed the box with the pocket watch to my chest, forcing my face blank, memorizing every cruel smirk, every whisper, every clap. Because one day soon, with just one quiet call, I would make every single one of them remember this night for a very different reason. I stumbled out of the banquet hall as applause for Lisa's next toast rang faintly behind me, the sting on my cheek still burning like fire. The cool night air of the hotel courtyard slapped me again, but this time with clarity. My hands trembled as I clutched the box with the pocket watch, the one gift I thought might bridge the gap, now nothing more than a reminder of how foolish I had been. I stood beneath a flickering street lamp, my breath rising in clouds, trying to steady myself as the echoes of laughter and whispers from inside pressed into my ears. For a long moment, I wanted to collapse to disappear into the shadows and never face another soul. But somewhere beneath the ache, a single thought pulsed. They think I am powerless. They think tonight is the end of me. I pulled my phone from my clutch, my thumb hovering over contacts. There was only one name I could press without hesitation: Rachel Turner. We had met in college when she was studying law, and I was buried in finance classes. Rachel had always been the one who told me, "Keep every receipt, every paper one day, the details save you." She was now a junior attorney at a bank downtown, sharp and relentless. The phone rang twice before her familiar voice answered, groggy but alert. "Emily, is everything okay?" My voice cracked, but I forced it steady. "I think someone has been using my name, Rachel. There are loans accounts I never signed for them. Tonight, Dad humiliated me in front of everyone, called me nothing but debt." Lisa clapped. "I need to know the truth." Rachel's tone sharpened instantly. "Tell me everything." I pressed the loan letter details against my thigh with shaking fingers, reading account numbers aloud, my voice low so no guest passing by would hear. Rachel typed quickly, her keys clicking in the background. After a pause, she said, "Emily, these accounts are real. They are in your name, but the application signatures, they do not match your file." I froze, my chest tightening. Who submitted them? Another pause. "The system logs show Lisa Carter, and the guarantor is your father." My knees buckled and I sat hard on the stone bench outside the hotel, the world spinning. My own sister had forged my name. My own father had stood behind her. The slap in the ballroom was not just humiliation, it was distraction, a spectacle to bury the fact that they had already stolen pieces of my life on paper. My hands clenched around the phone. "What do I do, Rachel?" Her voice was steady calm. "First, we collect evidence. Quietly. Do not confront them tonight. I will pull the full files tomorrow. Applications, signatures, surveillance footage from the branch. We will build this piece by piece." I pressed my free hand against my cheek, feeling the heat of the bruise, and for the first time that night, the pain steadied me instead of breaking me. Inside the hall, I could still hear laughter, the music resuming Lisa's voice, high and proud. They thought I was broken, erased. But with one quiet call, I had shifted the balance. Rachel said, "Emily, listen to me. They think you are weak. Let them believe it for now. Keep silent. Let them clap. Because when the truth comes out, no applause will save them." I closed my eyes, drew in a long breath and nodded, though she could not see. In that moment, I stopped being their victim. I became the quiet storm waiting just outside the door. The next morning, sunlight spilled weakly through my blinds, but I had not slept. My cheek throbbed with a deep bruise, each glance in the mirror reminding me of the spectacle I had endured. But beneath the ache was a steel determination. At 9, sharp, my phone buzzed. Rachel's voice came firm. "Meet me downtown bank headquarters, bring every document you have." I gathered the loan letter, the envelope, even the HR notice from work. I tucked them into a folder, my hands steady now, no longer trembling. The bank lobby smelled of polished marble and stale coffee. Rachel met me in a navy suit, her eyes sharp behind glasses. Without preamble, she guided me to a conference room, closing the door firmly. She spread files across the table, sliding copies she had pulled overnight. "Here," she said, pointing to application forms. "Your name, your social security number, but look closely at the signature." I leaned forward. The letters curled too smoothly, the loops unlike my quick angular strokes. She placed a document I had signed years ago beside it. The difference was undeniable. My stomach clenched. "This is forgery." Rachel nodded. "And look at the guarantor line. Your father's signature clear as day." I covered my mouth, bile rising. She continued tapping another page. "The branch log shows Lisa Carter was the one who submitted this in person." I whispered, "So they worked together." Rachel's lips tightened. "Exactly. But we need more than paper." She pulled up her laptop, clicking through footage from a bank's security system. After a few moments, a grainy video filled the screen. There was Lisa in a tailored blazer sliding a folder across the counter. Beside her, unmistakable in his work jacket, was my father nodding. The teller accepted the documents, stamping them. My chest constricted. "Proof," Rachel said. "We will subpoena cleaner footage, but this is enough to begin." She reached for another file. "Here are the loan disbursements. Notice anything?" My eyes scanned the deposits. Large sums had been wired not into my account, but into a joint account under Lisa's name with my father listed as secondary. My hands shook, anger surging hot. They had stolen under my identity, draining money under the mask of my credit. Rachel pressed on. "I also pulled emails from the loan officer. Lisa used your email address, but altered one letter enough to redirect confirmations." I felt dizzy. She had built a shadow version of me. I whispered, "How long has this been going on?" Rachel's answer was grim. "Months, maybe longer." "But listen, Emily, this is not just financial fraud. With the humiliation last night, they tried to cement the narrative that you are irresponsible, drowning in debt. That way, if you ever noticed the accounts, no one would believe you." My chest tightened as the pieces fell together. The slap, the laughter, the whispers, they were all part of the same trap to bury me. Rachel leaned closer, her voice calm but fierce. "They underestimated you. You kept your records clean, you trusted your instincts, and now we have enough to open a case." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight shift inside me. For the first time, I was not simply reacting, I was gathering weapons. Rachel outlined our next steps. We copy every document, notarize the differences in signature, preserve the video footage, secure the email trail. We also request a freeze on any future loans under your name until this case is resolved. I nodded, absorbing each instruction like a lifeline. She added, "Do not tell them you know. Keep going as if you are broken. Let them think the slap destroyed you. When the confrontation comes, we want every piece lined up." I left the bank with a thick folder pressed against my chest, the weight of evidence heavy but empowering. The bruise on my cheek ached with each step, but now it felt less like shame and more like a badge of survival. They had written me off as weak. They had celebrated my erasure. But paper does not lie. Signatures do not bend to applause, and cameras do not clap. Quietly, piece by piece, I was building the truth that would crush their performance. A week after the birthday humiliation, my father called another family gathering, this time at the house where Lisa and I had grown up. He spoke into the phone curtly. "Be on time. Emily, and do not make a scene." I hung up without answering, my pulse steady. Rachel sat with me that afternoon, reviewing the folder one last time. Every page was labeled, every photo time-stamped, every video clip preserved. When I drove to the old house, my heart did not pound with fear. It beat with purpose. The living room was crowded with relatives again, though smaller than the banquet, perhaps 25 people crammed onto couches and folding chairs. Lisa wore a silk blouse, radiant and smug. Dad poured drinks, Mom flitted with trays of snacks. Conversation hushed when I entered. I sat silently near the center, the folder balanced on my knees. Dad cleared his throat, his voice booming. "Tonight I want to thank Lisa again for her achievements and for supporting this family." His eyes flicked to me with disdain. "Unlike others here who only bring debt and shame." Snickers rippled through the room. Lisa smirked, tilting her glass. My jaw clenched, but I remained still. Then slowly I stood opening the folder. I slid a page onto the coffee table. A loan application with my name, my social security number, and a forged signature. Murmurs rose. I laid down the next page, my authentic signature for comparison. Cousins leaned closer. Eyebrows furrowed. I pressed a button on my laptop, and on the TV screen flickered grainy footage. Lisa at the bank counter, my father beside her sliding papers to the teller. The room fell silent except for the faint buzz of the old ceiling fan. Dad's face drained of color. Lisa froze, eyes wide, her wine glass trembling. I spoke evenly, my voice carrying. For months, loans have been taken in my name. My credit has been damaged, my reputation questioned. Last week, I was humiliated in front of 77 people called a disgrace, accused of debt. That was the cover. This is the truth. I gestured at the footage as Lisa leaned forward, sputtering. That could be anyone. The video is blurry. Rachel stepped into the room, then calm in her navy suit, holding notarized affidavits. Not blurry enough. She held up certified copies. These are official records. Your signatures, Mr. Carter. Miss Carter witnessed and filed. Gasps spread like wildfire. An aunt covered her mouth. A cousin whispered, "Oh my God!" Dad barked. "This is a family matter. You have no right bringing outsiders." Rachel met his glare. "Fraud is not a family matter. It is a crime." Lisa's voice cracked. "Dad told me it would help us, that Emily would never notice." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Dad roared, "Silence, you fool!" But it was too late. The room erupted, relatives murmuring, some standing, shaking their heads. I held up the final sheet, the transfer records showing the funds wired to Lisa's joint account. "This money never touched me. It was always yours." My voice did not shake. Dad lunged forward, his face twisted, but Rachel raised her hand. "Warning, I advise you to sit down." The weight of her presence, the crisp papers in her hands, pinned him. He sank back into his chair, fury radiating. Lisa's eyes brimmed with tears, her earlier smugness shattered. For the first time, silence worked in my favor. No one mocked me now. No one whispered shame. They whispered words like fraud, betrayal, disgrace, but aimed not at me, at them. I closed the folder with finality. One quiet call. That was all it took. The room seemed to tilt again, but this time not to erase me. This time to reveal the truth. The living room dissolved into chaos after Lisa's slip. Relatives muttered, some rising to their feet, others shaking their heads in disbelief. My father barked orders, shouting that everyone should leave, that this was private, but the damage was done. The evidence lay on the table in black and white, the video still frozen on the TV screen, showing him beside Lisa at the bank counter. Rachel's calm voice cut through the noise. "I have already forwarded these documents to the bank's fraud division. An internal investigation is underway, and depending on their findings, the district attorney may be notified." Dad's face flushed crimson. "You dare bring the law into my house." Rachel did not flinch. "It was you who brought the law into this, when you signed your daughter's name without consent." Lisa buried her face in her hands, sobbing now. Her earlier arrogance crumbled. An aunt touched her shoulder but pulled back when she realized the weight of what had been revealed. My father turned to me, eyes blazing. "You would ruin us your own blood." My voice was quiet but sharp. "You ruined yourselves when you decided my identity was just another tool. For years you told me I was nothing. Now the paper shows otherwise." Over the next days, the consequences rippled outward. The bank froze, the fraudulent accounts halting all further withdrawals. Investigators interviewed the loan officer who confirmed that Lisa and my father had been the ones to sit across from her desk. Screenshots of forged emails were printed, compared, verified. HR at my office received confirmation that the debts attributed to me were not mine, clearing my record. For the first time in months, I walked through those glass doors with my head held high. Meanwhile, at the repair shop my father owned, whispers spread. Customers heard rumors of fraud, trust dissolved, business slowed. Lisa's law firm rescinded her conditional offer after hearing of the investigation. Pride had shielded them for years, but now pride cracked into dust. A court hearing was scheduled to review the fraud case. Rachel stood beside me as we entered, a stack of binders in her arms. Lisa sat pale at the defense table, Dad's jaw clenched tight. The judge leafed through documents, eyes narrowing. Forged signatures, unauthorized loans, misappropriated funds. His gavel struck. "The matter will proceed to trial." My heart thudded, but not with fear. At last, truth was no longer mine alone to carry. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters murmured, but I kept my gaze forward. I was not the scandal. I was the survivor. Weeks later, the bank reached a settlement. Lisa was ordered to repay the loans my father stripped of his guarantor rights, barred from future applications. My credit was restored, my name cleared. The irony was sharp. They had slapped me in front of 77 people to brand me with shame, yet now the entire community saw them branded with fraud. Relatives who once whispered against me now sent quiet apologies. Neighbors who had gossiped offered sympathetic nods. None of it erased the pain, but it proved what Rachel had said. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy. At home, I placed the pocket watch on my dresser. It no longer felt like a plea for recognition. It was a reminder that time exposes truth. Dad stopped calling. Lisa avoided me entirely. Mom sent one message, brief and trembling. I did not know what to do. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling both anger and pity. They had tried to erase me, but instead erased themselves. Justice had not restored our family, but it had restored me. In the weeks after the settlement, I felt the air around me change. For the first time in years, I walked through Boston's crowded streets without the invisible weight of shame pressing against my shoulders. My credit was restored, my reputation mended, and the whispers that once followed me had fallen silent. Yet healing did not come all at once. At night, I still woke from dreams of the slap, hearing Lisa's laughter echo in my ears, feeling the sting of 77 eyes on me. But morning light reminded me that those eyes had shifted, that truth had carved a new path. I decided to move out of the small apartment I had rented for years and bought a modest condo near the Charles River. It was not large, just 2 bedrooms with hardwood floors and a balcony where I could watch the water ripple, but it was mine, secured, in my name alone, untouchable. Signing the deed felt like reclaiming not only property, but identity. I joined a local support group for women who had experienced financial abuse by relatives or partners. In that circle, I found voices like mine, stories of sisters forging checks, spouses draining savings, parents using children's credit. Each story reminded me I was not alone, that betrayal is tragically common, but also that survival is possible. Together, we shared strategies from monitoring credit reports to creating emergency funds, from legal resources to emotional resilience. Slowly, the loneliness that had shadowed me for years began to lift. On weekends, I walked along the river, sometimes volunteering at the community center to teach basic financial literacy. Watching young women learn how to read contracts, how to safeguard their accounts, filled me with a sense of purpose I had never felt at home. It was as if by teaching them to protect themselves, I was healing the part of me that had been exploited. The pocket watch sat on my dresser, still ticking softly. I no longer saw it as a desperate offering to a father who never valued me. I saw it as a symbol of endurance of time that continued despite betrayal. I wound it each week as a ritual, a reminder that the past cannot be erased, but the future can be rewritten. My mother called once, her voice hesitant, saying she wished things had been different, that she had been stronger. I listened, but did not answer right away. Forgiveness, I realized, was not a single word spoken over the phone. It was a process, and I could choose how far it went. For now, boundaries mattered more than reconciliation. Lisa never called. Her silence was its own confession. In quiet moments, I thought of the girl I had been standing on porches, clutching secondhand gifts, swallowing insults, believing I was invisible. I wanted to reach back and tell her, "You were never invisible." They simply refused to see. That realization soothed me more than any apology could. Healing was not about erasing scars, but about wearing them without shame. One evening, sitting on my balcony watching the sun sink behind the skyline, I whispered to myself, "They tried to erase me, but I wrote myself back in ink they cannot wash away." And for the first time in years, I believed it. If you have stayed with me through this story, then you understand what betrayal inside a family truly feels like. A slap across the face stings for a moment, but the real wound comes when the people who should love you celebrate your pain. My sister clapped my father, called me nothing. 77 guests watched, and for a moment I thought my life had ended that night. But one quiet call reminded me that silence can be strategy, that dignity can be rebuilt, and that truth has a way of rising even when others try to bury it. I want to ask you, have you ever been humiliated by your own family, made to feel small when you deserved respect? Tell me in the comments where you are listening from because stories like ours cross oceans and generations. If this story spoke to you, if you felt that knot in your chest as I did in mine, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded that betrayal is not the end. Just as dignity and healing are possible, one quiet call changed my life, and maybe tonight, hearing this story is the quiet call you needed to make for yourself.